in catering, for example? Where have you seen events go wrong with managing the advance process for something like catering?
I think it's partially understanding who is getting catering and who's not, identifying those groups of who actually is and not. Because there are some groups that you contract that's not part of the deal. And so don't even offer it to them. You know, when you and this is where I kind of getting back to the point of like, not every bucket's advance is going to be the same. You know, you may not be offering catering to a person who's working a sponsorship activation, right? So don't even include that. But I mean, that requires planning and forethought and work and design on the whatever the system is that you're using. But you know, I don't envy the catering managers, because it's tough. A lot of these catering companies are requiring guarantees. You know, they want them to have numbers in advance, but catering, for better or worse, gets tied a lot of times to the same kind of timeline as credentials, right? Because it's kind of a people asset rather than like this hard asset for doing the work. And so, you know, credentials always comes in really, really late, because, you know, teams are still trying to fill out their personnel. And, you know, we've all played there's no way I can tell you a number of how many people I'm bringing, but there's no way I'm going to be able to tell you who these people are, these names for these credentials. And so the catering suffers because of that too, because, you know, you don't know how many people are only working half a day, you know, a month out. So they may be working the first part of the show and not the second. So they need this meal, but not that meal. So, you know, I think you could probably have a round table on catering, advancing, and management with some show catering managers who could explain this a lot better than I could. But
Totally.
you know, I think it's really tied to the time frame that has become the challenge. And also too, I know a lot of people, you know, good gosh, I mean the tickets, if you're still using a hard ticket based system for your catering, you know, I implore you to look at some other options as being tied to anything besides a hard ticketing system.
Any thoughts on overall, Gina, on that?
Yeah, catering is just so important. When people are out there working in the sun for many hours in a day, you know, that's their break time. That is where they get the fuel for the rest of the day. And I've definitely seen on the catering side where, you know, they're maybe running out of food during the second hour of the meal service, or they don't have enough vegan options or gluten-free options, dietary restrictions. You know, if those aren't advanced properly, then that won't be served properly. And it's important that we get all that information at an individual level, and it changes every year. You can't assume someone is still not eating a certain thing, or, you know, people are tricky. Maybe you're vegan, but you eat eggs, you know, like there's so many nuances to people's diets. And it's important, depending on, you know, just how your caterer is set up to handle these sorts of things. You have to advance when they're coming. When are the vegans coming? When are the gluten-free people showing up, so that you have accurate numbers on a per meal basis? Otherwise, these people are going to show up and not have enough food. You know, we've seen plates of food just not be enough. That, you know, they started being concerned of how much food they had for how many people are showing up. You know, some caterers that have been doing it a long time know to over make food, or certain food can, you know, sometimes you get to serve yourself, sometimes it's being served for you for portion control. And all these things weigh into just how important it is to know the details of catering and getting that to the caterer in time for them to actually execute that in a good way. Because ultimately, it's going to end up with your team malnourished, which will affect their quality of work and their quality of life, and just how everything else gets done on site. So catering is super important in keeping your people fed and making sure that ultimately they feel good at the end of the day. And food has a lot to do with that. So it's important to make sure you get all that information proper so that it comes to them in a good way.